Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at Anthropic's privacy policy. This is an AI company most known for its AI chatbot Claude. As is tradition, I want to set some expectations before we get started. We will be using the privacy visualizer tool I made to help us better retain what has been read. If you want to follow along, you can pull it up yourself by going to privacyvisualizer.com or by following the link in the description, which also has the related links to this privacy policy reading. As a quick recap, we will use blue to represent data that is collected, yellow for shared data, and red for sold data. We will be using the definition of sold as described in the California's Consumer Privacy Act, otherwise known as the CCPA. As we do in all readings on this channel, we will be reading this with the assumption of worst case scenario. This means that if they mention some data is optional, we will treat it as if it were collected, shared, or sold, depending on the surrounding context. We're reading this from the perspective of someone who clicks yes on whatever pop-ups might come up. The one exception will be for business-to-business things. Most businesses come up with their own contracts and policies, so it's not really relevant to the average person. Most people are not representing businesses, so we will ignore these sections if they come up. As a reminder, the purpose of the privacy visualizer is to help us retain what we've read. It is not meant to summarize what we've read to others. You'll see as we read along that it oversimplifies things too much, and it doesn't give us a full picture like the video would in its entirety. Please avoid using the privacy visualizer as a tool to summarize privacy policies. It is a tool to help you read privacy policies. If you want to learn more about that, check out the video on the main channel here. With that out of the way, let's first go to Anthropic's website, scroll down to the bottom, and we can click the privacy policy on the right side. Privacy policy, effective January 12th, 2026. And then they have a link to previous versions. This is the English version. Anthropic is an AI safety and research company working to build reliable, interpretable, and steerable AI systems. This privacy policy explains how we collect, use, disclose, and process your personal data when you use our website and other places where Anthropic acts as a data controller. For example, when you interact with Claude.ai or any products as a consumer for personal use, otherwise known as services, or when Anthropic operates and provides our commercial customers and their end users with access to our commercial products, such as the Claude Team Plan, otherwise known as commercial services. Commercial services are kind of what I was talking about with the business things. This privacy policy does not apply where Anthropic acts as a data processor and processes personal data on behalf of commercial customers using Anthropic's commercial services. For example, your employer has provisioned you a Claude for Work account, or you're using an app that is powered on the back end with Claude. In those cases, the commercial customer is the controller, and you can review their policies for more information how they handle your personal data. Please see our non-user privacy policy for information on how our large language models are trained and how personal data is obtained from third-party sources, including where others may submit personal data when using our services, may be used when developing or delivering our products and services. So we won't be looking at that in this particular video, but just know that this privacy policy itself does do a decent job of kind of understanding where all of this stuff comes from. You'll see in a little while what I'm talking about. This privacy policy also describes your privacy rights. For more information about your rights and how to exercise them, it is set out in Section 4, Rights and Choices. If you are located in Canada, Brazil, or the Republic of Korea, please read the relevant regional supplemental disclosure which applies to you. That is at the bottom of this policy, so we will get there. If you are located in Washington or a state with similar consumer health data laws, please read our Consumer Health Data Privacy Policy, which applies to you if you integrate third-party health applications with Claude. Okay, so I want to take a quick moment to mention something. If a privacy policy includes this data policy to comply with the state of Washington, that normally means that they handle sensitive health data. These documents are normally rather short, so we're going to have a peek at that before we continue. Again, we are going to assume worst case scenario, so we should understand what's going on in here. Consumer Health Data Privacy Policy, effective January 12th, 2026. This consumer health data privacy policy explains how we collect, use, disclose, process consumer health data in the event that we process such data. This consumer health data privacy policy applies only to where Anthropic acts as a data controller, for example, when you interact with Claude.ai or other products as a consumer for personal use. These supplemental disclosures contain additional information relevant to the residents of Washington or in states with similar consumer health data laws. This content should be read in conjunction with the rest of our privacy policy. In the case of a conflict between our privacy policy and these supplemental disclosures, the supplemental disclosure shall prevail where applicable. Okay, so what that means is that if you live in Washington and if there is something that seems to conflict with their main policy, this policy would apply. Again, that's only if you live in the state of Washington, but for the rest of us, we can at least use your laws to better understand what data is being handled. 1. Collection of consumer health data. We collect the following categories of consumer health data where you provide it to us directly, including if you elect to connect third-party applications to Claude.ai that contains your consumer health data. Information about your health-related conditions, symptoms, status, diagnoses, medical interventions, surgeries, procedures, testing, and treatments. Vital signs, bodily functions, symptoms, or health measurements that reveal your health status. Information about your use or purchase of prescribed medication, biometric and genetic data, precise location information, information including location or precise location information that could identify your attempt to seek healthcare services or supplies, and other information that may be used to infer or derive consumer health data. We have a lot of things to add to the privacy visualizer right off the bat. The first bullet point, that's going to be health data for sure. We also have purchase history with the third bullet, sensitive information with the fourth, and location data. And if you look at what it says there, precise location data, as a reminder, that can be an area between the building that you're currently in to the exact location of your phone down to the half inch of accuracy. This is described in the privacy visualizer along with some examples. The rest of the bullets in this list are just sort of companions that we already have listed, so yeah, that's fun. Let's keep reading. For additional information about the types of data we collect and how we collect it, please review 1. Collection of personal data in our privacy policy. You can revoke your consent to third-party integrations that may provide Claude.ai access to your consumer health data at any time in your settings. Again, we'll look at the main policy here in a moment. 2. Uses of consumer health data permitted under the applicable data protection laws. We use your consumer health data for the following purposes. To integrate your third-party health applications with Claude.ai so that you can share data with Claude to discuss, to prevent and investigate fraud, abuse, and violations of our usage policy, unlawful or criminal activity, unauthorized access or use of personal data, or Anthropic systems and networks to protect our rights and the rights of others, and to meet legal, governmental, and institutional privacy obligations in an aggregated form to help us to develop, test, and improve our services. We may seek your consent to certain uses of consumer health data in accordance with applicable laws. For example, we may seek your consent to integrate with third-party health apps and collect and process data we collect through that integration. For information about how we use data, please review 2 uses of personal data permitted under applicable data protection laws in our privacy policy. Okay, nothing too wild there. I don't tend to comment on those sections, as it's the company trying to make the argument that all of this data is totally good, actually. I want to give them a fair shot because it's often the next section that quickly dismantles that. 3. How we disclose consumer health data. Anthropic will disclose the categories of consumer health data as described above to the categories of third parties described in 3, how we disclose personal data in our privacy policy. For example, if you choose to integrate the services with websites, apps, and services managed by third parties, by interacting with those third parties, you may choose to provide information to that third party via the services. To learn more about your third-party integrations, please review Setting Up Claude Integrations. So now we can mark every single item as yellow as the data is shared. Again, we will learn more in detail here in a bit. This last part just applies to folks living in Washington. 4. Rights and choices. You may be entitled, in accordance with applicable laws, to submit a request to know, access, or delete the consumer health data we have collected about you or withdraw consent to our uses of consumer health data. Anthropic gives you access to a variety of tools to manage your data. You can access these in your privacy settings. All right, that was a fun side tangent. Let's go look at what other kinds of data they collect. 1. We collect the following categories of personal data. Personal data you provide to us directly. Identity and contact data. Anthropic collects identifiers, including your name, email address, and phone number when you sign up for the Anthropic account or to receive information on our services. We may also collect indirect identifiers, example, user12345. So we can mark this both off as identifiers and contact info. Payment information. We shall collect payment information if you choose to purchase Anthropic's products or services. We can mark off financial data for that one. Inputs and outputs. You were able to interact with our services in a variety of formats, including but not limited to chat, coding, and agentic? What the heck is that word? I gotta look that one up. Agentic. Wow, I've never seen that word before. Okay. Inputs and outputs. You were able to interact with our services in a variety of formats, included but not limited to chat, coding, and agentic sentence, prompts, or inputs, which generate the responses and actions, outputs, based on your inputs. This includes third-party applications you choose to integrate with our services. If you include personal data or reference external content in your inputs, we will collect that information, and this information may be reproduced in your outputs. So this would all fall under the category user content, as this is stuff that you as the user are giving to Anthropic. Feedback on your use of our services. We appreciate feedback, including ideas and suggestions for improvement or rating an output response to input feedback. If you rate an output in response to an input, for example, by giving a thumbs up or thumbs down icon, we will store that entire related conversation as part of your feedback. You can learn more on how to use feedback here. This also generally would fall under user content. Communication information. If you communicate with us, including via our chatbot on our help site, we collect your name, contact information, and the contents of any messages you sent. Again, this is just user content as well as contact information. Personal data we receive automatically from your use of the services. When you use the services, we also receive certain technical data automatically described below as technical information. This includes device and connection information. Consistent with your device or browser permissions, your device or browser may automatically send us information about when and how you install, access, or use our services. This includes information such as your device type, operating system information, browser information, and web page refers, mobile network connection information, mobile operator, or internet service provider, ISP, time zone settings, IP address, including information about the location derived from your IP address, identifiers, including device or advertising identifiers, probabilistic identifiers, and other unique personal or online identifiers, and device location. Great. So that's going to be one that we already have marked, which is going to be identifiers, and there are also going to be things like location data with the IP address and the device location. Usage information. We collect the following information about the services, such as the dates and times of access, browsing history, search, information about the links you click, pages you view, and other information about how you use the services and technology based on the devices you use and access to the service. Okay. Usage data will be our next new icon to add to the visualizer, and right in there, we also have browsing history and search history, so we can knock those out as well. Log and troubleshooting information. We collect information about how our services are performing when you use them. This information includes log files. If you or your device experiences an error, we may collect information about this error, the time that the error occurred, the feature being used, the state of the application when the error occurred, and any other communications or content provided at the time when the error occurred. All right, this information falls under diagnostics, which is pretty standard. Cookies and similar technologies. We and our service providers use cookies, scripts, or similar technologies to manage the services and collect information about you and the use of the services. These technologies help us recognize you, customize or personalize your experience, market additional products or services to you, and analyze the use of our services to make them safer or more useful to you. For more details about how we use these technologies and your opt-out controls and other options, please visit our cookie policy. So cookies generally fall under browsing history since they can be used to track you across websites. If you want to learn more about how cookies work, you can check out this video on my main channel. Personal data we collect or receive to train our models. Okay, so this is kind of tricky to tag. On one hand, it's generally tricky to get these models to spit out the exact input, but it's certainly not impossible, as we've already seen this happen many times. In fact, there's some really fun lawsuits going on right now that are related to this exact issue. Since this is new for us, we will say that data that is used to train AI models will be considered shared data. Anthropic obtains personal information from third-party sources in order to train our models. Specifically, we train models on the following sources. Publicly available information via the internet. Okay, so we need to mark this one off as other data and mark it as shared data. Data sets we obtain through commercial agreements with third-party businesses, data that our users or crowd workers provide, including inputs and outputs from our services, unless users opt out. Okay, so that one counts as user content. Feedback that users explicitly provide about our services, materials flagged for safety, security, or policy review, and data that we generate internally. For more information about how we collect and use personal data to develop our language models that power our services, the steps we take to minimize privacy impact on individuals through our training process, your choices with respect to that information, please see our separate non-user privacy policy. 2. Uses of personal data permitted under applicable data protection laws. Remember, this section is pretty much a plea for why they really want this data. We use your personal data for the following purposes: to provide, maintain, facilitate any products and services offered to you with respect to your Anthropic account, which is governed by your terms of service; to provide, maintain, facilitate operational services and features that enhance platform functionality and user experiences; to communicate with you, including to send you information about our services and events; to create and administer your Anthropic account; to facilitate payments for products and services provided by Anthropic; to prevent fraud, abuse, and violations of our usage policy, unlawful or criminal activity, unauthorized access or use of personal data or Anthropic systems and networks; to protect our rights and the rights of others, and to meet legal, governmental, and institutional policy obligations; to investigate and resolve disputes; to investigate and resolve security issues; to debug and to identify and repair errors that impair existing functionality; to improve the services and conduct research, including training our models; and to enforce our terms of service and similar agreements, including our usage policy. We may use your inputs and outputs to train our models to improve our services unless you opt out through your account settings. Even if you opt out, we will use your inputs and outputs for model improvement when 1. Your conversations are flagged for safety review to improve our ability to detect harmful content, enforce our policies, or advance AI safety research; or 2. You've explicitly reported the materials to us, for example, via our feedback mechanisms. Please see Section 10 below for details on our legal basis for processing your personal data. How we disclose personal data. Anthropic will disclose personal data to the following categories of third parties for the purposes explained in this policy: affiliates and corporate partners. Anthropic discloses the categories of personal data described above between and among its affiliates and related entities. Service providers and business partners. Anthropic may disclose the categories of personal data described above with service providers and business partners for a variety of business purposes, including website data and data hosting, ensuring compliance with industry standards, research, auditing, data processing, and providing you with these services. Anthropic may also disclose personal data in the following circumstances: as part of a significant corporate event. If Anthropic is involved in a merger, corporate transaction, bankruptcy, or other situation involving the transfer of business assets, Anthropic will disclose your personal details as part of these corporate transactions. Third-party websites or services. Our services may include integrations with or may direct to you the websites and apps and services managed by third parties. By integrating with these third parties, you are providing information directly to those third parties and not with Anthropic, and subject to the third party's privacy policies. If you access third-party services, such as social media sites or other sites linked through the service, example, if you follow a link to our Twitter account, these third-party services will be able to collect personal data about you, including information about your activity on the services. If we link to a site or service via our service, you should read their data usage policy or other documentation. Our linking to another site does not mean we endorse it or speak for that third party. Pursuant to regulatory or legal requirements, safety, rights of others, and to enforce our rights of our terms, we may disclose personal data to governmental and regulatory authorities as required by law, including for legal, tax, or accounting purposes, in response to their request for such information or to assist in investigations. We may also disclose personal data to third parties in connections with these claims, disputes, or litigation when otherwise permitted by law, or if we determine the disclosure is necessary to protect health and safety of you or any other person, to protect against fraud or credit risk, to enforce our legal rights or the legal rights of others, to enforce the contractual commitments that you have made, or as otherwise permitted or required by applicable law, with an individual's consent. Anthropic will otherwise disclose personal data when an individual gives us permission to direct us to disclose this information, including as a part of our services. You can find information on our sub-processor list about the third parties Anthropic engages to help process personal data provided to us, where Anthropic acts as a data processor, such as with respect to personal data we receive, process, store, or host when you use Anthropic's commercial services. Okay, I'll admit that sub-processor list is pretty cool. When you click into there, you can see all of the companies that have your data, and boy is it a list. It seems that everything goes to Google, Amazon, and Cloudflare. Financial and purchase history goes to Stripe. WorkOS is used to sign into the development platform, so we'll say diagnostics for that one. Intercom and functional software are used for user support, and Twilio and iRatable are used for communication, so we can knock out user content for those four. SIFT and Arcosi Labs are used for fraud and abuse detection, so that's going to be usage data and identifiers. The Brave Search is going to have search history and browsing history. 11 Labs is going to have user content as well, since it's just reading responses. And then the spookiest company on the list, Palantir. FedRAMP Cloud implies that this is mainly used for government uses, but I have no idea what data goes to Palantir. So that's unsettling to say the least. But hey, at least we have a list. That's more than most companies provide. Rights and choices, depending on where you live and the laws that apply in your country of residence. You may enjoy certain rights regarding your personal data, as described further below. However, please be aware that these rights are limited, and the process by which we may need to action your request regarding our training dataset are complex. We may also decline a request if we have a lawful reason for doing so. That said, we strive to prioritize the protection of personal data and comply with applicable privacy laws. To exercise your rights, you or an authorized agent may submit a request by emailing us at privacy@anthropic.com. After we receive your request, we may verify it by requesting information sufficient to confirm your identity. You may also have the right to appeal requests that we will deny by emailing privacy@anthropic.com. Anthropic will not discriminate based on the exercising of your privacy rights that you have. Set out below is a summary of the rights which you may enjoy, depending on the laws that apply in your country of residence. Right to know. The right to know what personal data Anthropic processes about you, including the categories of personal data, categories of sources which it is collected, the business and commercial purposes of the collection, and the categories of third parties whom we disclose it. Access and data portability. The right to request a copy of the personal data Anthropic processes about you, subject to certain exceptions and conditions. In certain cases and subject to applicable law, you may have the right to port your information. Deletion. The right to request that we delete personal information when you use our services, subject to certain exceptions. You are able to delete individual conversations, which will be removed immediately from your conversation history and automatically deleted from our backend within 30 days. Learn more here. Correction. You have the right to request that we correct inaccurate personal data Anthropic retains about you, or subject to certain exceptions. Please note that we cannot guarantee the factual accuracy of outputs. If outputs contain factually inaccurate personal data relating to you, you can submit a correction request and we will make a reasonable effort to correct this data. But due to the technical complexity of our large language models, it may not always be possible for us to do so. Objection. The right to object to processing of your personal data, including profiling conducted on grounds of public or legitimate interest. In places where such a right applies, we will no longer process the personal data in case of such objection unless we demonstrate compelling legitimate grounds for the processing which override your interest, rights, and freedoms, or for the establishment, exercise, or defense of legal claims. If we use your information for direct marketing, you can object and opt out of future marketing messages using the unsubscribe link in each communication. Restriction. The right to restrict our processing of your personal data in certain circumstances. Withdrawal of consent. Where Anthropic's processing of your personal data is based on consent, you have the right to withdraw your consent. The withdrawal of consent will not affect the lawfulness of processing based on consent before its withdrawals. Automated decision-making. Anthropic does not engage in decision-making based solely on automated processing or profiling in a manner which produces a legal effect, i.e. impacts your legal rights, or significantly affects you in a similar way, Example, significantly affects your financial circumstances or ability to access essential goods or services, and sale and targeted Anthropic marketing of its products and services. Anthropic does not sell your personal data, as that term is defined by applicable laws and regulations. You can opt out of sharing your personal information for targeted advertising to promote our products and services, and we will honor your global privacy controls. To learn more, click here. Anthropic gives you access to a variety of tools to help you manage your data, and you can access these in your privacy settings. So, the big takeaway for me in there is that they don't sell your information by the language that we defined at the start. Data transfers. When you access our websites or services, your personal data may be transferred to our servers in the US or to other countries outside of the European Economic Area, EEA, and the UK. This may be a direct provision of your personal data to us or a transfer that we or a third party make. Where information is transferred outside the EEA or the UK, we ensure it benefits from an adequate level of data protection by relying on adequacy decisions. These are decisions from the European Commission under Article 45 GDPR or equivalent decisions under other laws, where they recognize that a country outside the EEA offers an adequate level of data protection. We transfer your information as described in the collection of personal data to some countries or adequacy decisions, such as countries listed here, or standard contractual clauses. The European Commission has approved contractual clauses under Article 46 GDPR that allows companies in the EEA to transfer data outside the EEA. These and their approved equivalent in the UK and Switzerland are called standard contractual clauses. We rely on standard contractual clauses to transfer information as described in the collection of personal data to certain affiliates and third parties in countries without adequacy decision. In certain situations, we rely on derogations provided for under applicable data protection law to transfer information to a third country. Woof, that section is wordy. Data retention, data lifecycle, and security controls. Anthropic retains your personal data for as long as reasonable necessary for the purposes and criteria outlined in this privacy policy and explained further in our Privacy Center. When the personal data collected is no longer required by us, we and our service providers will perform the necessary procedures for destroying, deleting, erasing, or converting into anonymous forms as permitted or required under applicable laws. Aggregated or de-identified information. We may process data in an aggregated or de-identified form to analyze the effectiveness of our services, conduct research, study user behavior, and train our AI models as permitted under applicable laws. For instance, when you submit feedback, we disassociate inputs and outputs from your user ID and use them for training and improving our models. If our systems flag inputs or outputs for potentially violating our usage policy, we disassociate the content from your user ID to train our trust and safety internal classification and generative models. However, we may re-identify the inputs and outputs to enforce our usage policy with the responsible user if necessary. To improve our user experience, we may analyze and aggregate user behavior and usage data. This information does not identify individual users. Security controls related to our processing of personal data. We implement appropriate technical and organizational security measures designed to protect personal data from loss, misuse, or unauthorized access, disclosure, alteration, or destruction. Children. Our service is not directed towards, and we do not knowingly collect, use, disclose, sell, or share any information from children under the age 18. If you become aware that a child under the age 18 has provided any personal data to us while using our services, please email us at privacy@anthropic.com and we will investigate the matter and, if appropriate, delete the personal data. Just like we said in the OpenAI privacy policy, if you are a parent and you have a child that is giving out sensitive personal information to Claude, and the contents of this policy concern you, email them. You actually have the right to get that data deleted. This applies to anyone, not just states with privacy laws. Again, that email is privacy@anthropic.com. Changes to our privacy policy. Anthropic may update this privacy policy from time to time. We will notify you of any material changes to this privacy policy as appropriate and update the effective date at the top of this policy. You can view a summary of privacy policy changes or previous versions at our Privacy Center. Contact information. If you live in the European Economic Area, EEA, or UK or Switzerland, otherwise known as the European region, the data controller responsible for your personal data is Anthropic Ireland Limited. If you live outside the European Union, The data collector responsible for your personal data is Anthropic PBC. If you have any questions about this privacy policy, or you have questions or complaints, requests regarding your personal data, you can contact us as described below, and then there's some addresses. You can email us at privacy@anthropic.com and contact our data protection privacy officer at dpo@anthropic.com. Please note that under many countries' laws, you have the right to lodge a complaint with the supervisory authority in the place in which you live or work. A full list of EU supervisory authorities' contact details are available here. If you live or work in the UK, you have the right to lodge a complaint with the UK Information Commissioner's Office. If you live in Brazil, you have the right to lodge a complaint with the Brazilian Data Protection Authority. If you live in Australia, you have a right to lodge a complaint with the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. All right, so the rest of this stuff applies to non-US places, and I don't really have a strong understanding with those laws, so I'm just going to visually scroll past this slowly. I do encourage you to read these if you live outside the US, but we're going to go down to like I said, the rest of this is just applicable to regions outside the US. Again, I won't be able to do a good job explaining these sections because I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot of this stuff. So if you live in those areas and you have information that you feel like is worth providing based on these sections, please leave a comment down below. But that's basically the end of the Anthropic privacy policy. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for other privacy policies you want me to read, leave a comment down below. If you want to support the channel, you can do so for just $1 a month over at patreon.com/rejectconvenience.